When you think of a nation's military, you probably picture one singular, unified force. But in Iran, that's not the case at all. The country operates on a totally different model, an architecture of power, let's call it, that's built on not one, but two completely separate and powerful militaries. And believe me, this isn't just some weird organizational quirk. It's absolutely key to understanding how Iran works, both at home and on the world stage. So that begs the big question, right? Why on earth would one country need two separate armies, two navies, two air forces? It seems kind of redundant, but the answer gets right to the very heart of modern Iran. It's a story rooted in revolution, deep-seated ideology, and a really unique strategy for survival. To get a handle on this, we really have to go back to where it all began. We're talking about two parallel institutions, the regular, conventional army, which is called the Artesh, and the ideological army, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or as you've probably heard them called, the IRGC. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1979. The Iranian Revolution just kicked out the Shah. The new leaders look at the existing military, the Artesh, and they're deeply suspicious. They see it as a holdover from the old regime. So, to protect their new republic from enemies, especially enemies they feared were inside the country, they created something new, the IRGC. And here's the crucial part. The IRGC's primary loyalty wasn't to the nation of Iran, it was to the revolution itself. This whole two-army system was then forged in the fire of the brutal 8-year war with Iraq, which really solidified the structure we see today. So how do these two forces actually operate in the real world? While they both ultimately serve the Iranian state, their day-to-day missions, their structures, and even their entire philosophies are just fundamentally different. And this is where that split becomes really clear. On one side, you've got the Artesh. This is the conventional army, about 420,000 soldiers. Their job is exactly what you'd expect: defend Iran's borders using tanks, fighter jets, and warships. Pretty standard stuff. On the other side, you have the IRGC. It's smaller, sure, but its mission is way broader and way more ideological. Its job is to protect the revolutionary system itself from any threat, foreign or domestic, and that one distinction sends them down two completely different roads. Just take a look at this. You get a sense of just how sprawling the IRGC really is. It's not just an army, it's more like a whole ecosystem. You can see how the main command branches out. Yeah, it's got its own navy and air force, but it also controls massive intelligence agencies and provincial units that reach into every corner of the country. This deep, layered structure is what makes it so much more than just a military. If we break down that structure, the IRGC is basically organized into 5 main parts. It has its own ground forces, aerospace force, and navy, kind of like the Artesh. But then it has these 2 other branches that are incredibly influential and unique. The Quds Force, which handles all its operations outside of Iran, and the Basij, which is this huge volunteer militia. And it's really that internal role that makes the IRGC so powerful inside Iran. That mission to safeguard the revolution is often interpreted as a license to suppress any kind of domestic opposition. And the main tool they use to do that? The Basij. The Basij is not your typical military unit. It's a volunteer militia whose members are embedded in almost every part of Iranian life. They're in universities, factories, you name it. This huge network basically acts as the regime's eyes and ears on the ground. And they can be mobilized in a flash for anything from helping with a religious ceremony to cracking down hard on protests. This quote really hits the nail on the head. The Basij's power comes from the fact that they are just everywhere. They aren't tucked away in some barracks. They're a constant, visible presence on street corners, enforcing social rules and acting as the absolute front line of internal security. So how does that actually play out? Well, when a protest breaks out, the response is anything but chaotic. It's like a machine. Highly organized teams move in, and each one has a specific job. You'll have barrier teams to block off streets. Motorized assault teams on motorcycles will charge into crowds to break them up. At the same time, pursuit teams go after protest leaders, while documentation teams are filming everything to identify people for arrest later. It is a cold, methodical system designed to take apart dissent piece by piece. But the IRGC's power doesn't end with guns and security, not even close. To really grasp its influence, you have to follow the money. Because over decades, it has built an absolutely colossal economic empire, turning it into, effectively, a state within the state. This wasn't an accident. After the Iran-Iraq War, the IRGC used its political power to get into major industries. We're talking construction, energy, telecom, the works. It became one of the biggest business players in the entire country. They built this huge network of companies, both above board and in the shadows, that make money completely outside of the normal government budget. And here's why that's so important. Financial independence creates political power. By funding its own operations, the IRGC doesn't have to go to politicians asking for money. It can push its own agenda, reward its allies, and have a huge say in which direction the country goes. Okay, so we've looked at the structure, the internal security role, and the economic power. Now, let's see how this whole dual military system is actually designed to work in a real-world conflict. And just a quick note before we dive in, this next part is a hypothetical scenario. It's based entirely on publicly available analysis of military doctrine, and we're just using it as a way to illustrate how these two very different forces would likely be used. So our scenario takes place in the Strait of Hormuz. You have to understand, this is one of the most critical arteries for the entire global economy. About a quarter of all oil shipped by sea passes through this narrow waterway. So does about a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas. If you control the strait, you have immense leverage over the world. Now, in a crisis here, that division of labor would be stark. The Artesh would be on defense. Its Navy and Air Force would try to shield Iran's coast from a conventional military attack. The IRGC, on the other hand, would go on offense, but its approach would be anything but conventional. You see, the IRGC's playbook is all about something called asymmetric warfare. They know they can't go head-to-head with a major world power's navy, so they don't even try. Instead, they'd use swarms of small, fast attack boats, they'd lay sea mines, launch drones, and fire anti-ship missiles from hidden coastal sites. The goal isn't to win some big, decisive battle. The goal is to make the strait so dangerous that no one can get through, inflicting huge economic and political pain on their enemies. So let's boil this all down. First, Iran operates two parallel militaries, the conventional Artesh and the ideological IRGC. Second, the IRGC was created specifically to defend the revolutionary regime itself. Third, this has evolved into a triple role. The IRGC is a military, an internal security force, and an economic powerhouse. And finally, this entire dual structure allows Iran to pursue a two-track strategy, be ready for a conventional war, but also be an expert in asymmetric warfare. And this leaves us with a final, really crucial question to think about. When a military force has its own army, its own intelligence agencies, and its own independent economic empire, it truly becomes a state within a state. So who does a force that powerful ultimately answer to?